Hello again, humans. It's Hannah. Welcome back to the second channel once again. This is day 6 of our 7-day in a row videos leading up to Halloween. That's it. Okay, that's the intro. Let's get into it. Doop boop beep boop beep boop bop. Okay, the first story for today goes, "Hi Hannah. I have a story that I would love to share because it's been creeping me out for years and I just can't explain it. I'm not sure what exactly to call the subject of it because what happened is just so weird. I think it's kind of similar to doppelganger stories though. Ooh, I love doppelganger stories. Before I tell my story, I have to tell my mom's first, so bear with me since this first part isn't a first-hand account. This story always creeped me out as a kid, but it wasn't until what happened to me later on that I really understood how terrifying it must have been. One afternoon, my mom went into the room she shared with my dad to take a midday nap. She slept for about an hour until the next thing she knows, she's being woken up by my dad, who is absolutely terrified out of his mind. And I mean, the dude is in a complete panic, eyes wide and hyperventilating. She had never seen him so scared. My mom asked him what's wrong, and he tells her this. He was sitting on the couch watching TV when he saw my mom open their bedroom door and walk across the living room and then into the kitchen out of his view. He didn't think anything of it until a few minutes passed with no noise and without her walking out. When he called out for her from the couch and got no response, he got up and walked into the kitchen to see if she was okay, but she wasn't there. To be clear, there is no way to enter/exit the kitchen other than the archway that my dad had been facing. She literally disappeared into thin air. When my dad found out that my mom had been asleep the past hour, he was inconsolable. He was sure that he had seen her, but there was just no way it was her. The second part, my personal experience, happened when I was 17 and living with my mom and my younger sister. I should mention that this happened in a new place and not the house from the first story, but the layout was similar. One afternoon, I went into my room to take a midday nap. After I slept for a while, and I'm not sure how long it was, but it was a substantial nap for sure, I left my room to get a pop. Are you from the Midwest? You got to tell us what state you're from. You don't actually have to tell us that if you're not comfortable, but saying pop instead of soda is such a Midwest thing. When I walked out into the living room, my sister asked me why I didn't answer her when I came out of my room earlier. I was confused and I was like, I was asleep. What do you mean? And that's when she started panicking. She told me that she was sitting on the couch watching YouTube when she saw me do this silly little run that I thought was so quirky into the kitchen, like I always did at the time. She asked me something, and when I didn't answer her, she assumed I ignored her and just put her headphones on and went back to her video. So I didn't notice that I never walked back out of the kitchen. I was so terrified when she told me all of this because I immediately thought of what happened to my mom, or also what happened to your dad. It was almost exactly the same scenario. Of course, I realized the chance that my conniving little sister knew my mom's story and was making this up, so I asked her if she knew about what happened to our mom in a vague way. She had no clue what I was talking about, and I'll tell you, this kid couldn't tell the smallest lie without cracking up. So I told her my mom's story, and we were both in just complete shock. I had never seen my sister so horrified, and I still haven't to this day. This was coming from a little girl who thought ghosts were fun, so seeing her so scared really threw me off and put me on edge. I consider myself to be a skeptical believer in the paranormal. I think there's things out there that we can't explain, but I also know that most ghost stories and evidence have a logical explanation. But I can't explain this one, and it gives me such an ick. There's something that feels so wrong about hearing someone seeing you when you weren't there. And for the same thing to happen to me that happened to my mom years ago, yuck. People have always said that we look almost exactly the same and we have very similar personality, so I wonder if that has anything to do with it. I recently moved into a new apartment with my boyfriend, and I can't help but wonder if history will repeat itself again. I'm sorry for how long this email got. Thanks so much for taking the time to read all of it on the off chance you did, since I'm sure you get plenty of stories submitted. I've only ever told this story to a few people in my personal life, so telling it here is pretty cathartic and brings some kind of closure for me, even if I still don't understand what the hell my dad and sister saw. I don't know if I want to know what it was. Anyway, thank you so much for carrying YouTube single-handedly, girl. Stop. I appreciate the content you make so much. And that was from Kristen. Thank you, Kristen. Okay, so my logical explanation, if I was going to be super skeptical, would be that perhaps your dad dozed off on the couch. And he had like, you know, those dreams that you have that you're not fully asleep, but you have like these weird, vague, semi-conscious dreams as you're falling asleep. I get those a lot, and they can feel incredibly scary and real sometimes, where it's like, it's weird. It's like dreams, but you're not in REM sleep, if that makes sense. And I kind of wonder if maybe while he was watching TV, he dozed off, and then he had one of these weird little moments where he thought he saw your mom. And then when he like snapped out of it and woke up again, he didn't realize that it was a dream until much later. And so it made him panic. That's where my brain goes. As for your sister, I can't really explain because she was obviously not sleeping because she was actively interacting with YouTube. So she probably didn't fall asleep. But is it possible that your sister, just being kind of young, also just saw something weird out of the corner of her eye and her brain filled in the blanks? That would be my logical explanation. My paranormal explanation, if this is indeed paranormal, would be, again, I would be really curious to know, and I assume that this is the same house. So the house that your dad had the incident with your mom's doppelganger, let's just call it that, and then your sister with your doppelganger, is it the same house? Because like, is there something in that house is that like that's causing these kind of things? Or maybe your mom does have a mimic or a doppelganger or some sort of shape-shifting thing that can mimic what you guys look like. Again, if we were going down the paranormal route, if it was the same house, it's something attached to that house that's doing those kinds of things. But yeah, thank you. That's a really interesting story. I haven't read a story similar to that before. So that was really, really fun to read. Okay, story number 2 for today. Hi, Hannah. Human Erica here. I have some creepy stuff to share with you and the other humans if you put this in one of your videos. So going on 6 years ago, I moved into a house in, I believe that South Carolina, with my boyfriend and his 2 kids. I have 2 kids of my own as well. The house was built sometime around the 1940s when this town used to be a mill town. One day, not long after we moved in, my boyfriend was at work and the 3 older kids were at school, so it was just myself and my son, who was almost 2 at the time, home alone. I was changing his diaper and had him laying on the floor in the living room. We were goofing off and whatnot, and all of a sudden he just looks behind my head and his eyes focus on something. His smile fades and I look behind me where there's nothing really to look at back there and see that nothing is there. And when I look back at him, he is looking at me smiling. Needless to say, it unsettled me a bit, especially because I've had very similar things happen when my daughter was a baby as well, but in a different home. Children, I swear, if ghosts are real, children are super perceptive to ghosts. It is so bizarre. If my kid ever came up to me and said they saw a ghost, I'd be like, honey, keep that to yourself. I don't want to know. That's none of my business. Fast forward a bit, and one day I'm in the kitchen, once again home alone with him, and he starts crawling on his hands and feet around the kitchen island. I found it extremely funny and was laughing and asked him what in the world he was doing, and he says in the most nonchalant way, "That's how the ghost crawls." Okay, so yeah, I was a little creeped out. I am a believer in the paranormal, but I am also a mom and know that kids say and do creepy stuff all the time. Anyway, let's talk about something more recent. As a self-proclaimed weirdo, I have weird collectibles, some bones, skulls, weird figurines, old paintings, and dolls. My favorite thing to collect are haunted dolls. If they're haunted or not, I don't know for sure, but I love them anyway. Out of all the dolls I have, I bought 2 because they were specifically sold as haunted doll. Both positive spirits, one a 30-year-old woman and the other a 9-year-old girl. I also have an antique sewing table that is supposedly haunted by the husband of the woman who used to own it. Okay, so on to the really unsettling part. One night recently, I was downstairs alone looking for one of my son's toys he wanted to sleep with. All the kids and my boyfriend were upstairs in bed except the oldest child whose room is downstairs. I found what I was looking for in the living room, turned off the light, and began going through the kitchen to the stairs when I stopped dead in my tracks because I heard a very loud and very clear baby cry. It was a distressed cry as well, so it hit me in my mom feels, and I got really emotional. I immediately went to the oldest child's room and opened the door. When I entered, she immediately asked me if I was okay because she said I looked sick and like I was about to cry. I asked her if she heard it, and she said no, and she was watching Hamilton, so not something that would have a baby crying in it. Also, her door was closed, so it wouldn't have been as loud as it was. It came from the living room area, so I knew it wasn't from upstairs, but I went up anyways and asked everyone if they had heard it, and everyone said no. I was freaked out and began looking outside to see if someone left a baby outside near my house or something, just looking for any explanation. Fast forward a couple of hours, and I figured it was just something I wouldn't be able to prove or anything, and I would just stay confused. Then I remember that we have a security camera in our living room. That's when I searched through all the movement and all the sounds captured, and that's when I found the clip. I was so excited that I had proof, and I'll attach the clip here so you can hear it as well. It is one of the most unsettling things I've ever had happen to me, and it hasn't happened since I know of, but I still check my camera every now and then. Also in the video, the screen is blocked by a little bin I keep my wax melts in, so you can't see anything sadly, but you will hear me walking around, crumpling a plastic bag, and then flip the switch, and it happens after that. I hope you and the humans watching have a great day. Farewell. Okay, thank you so much for your story, Erica. I'm gonna have us, let's put the clip in here so that everybody can watch it together. Okay, so if you have a baby monitor, I have heard if your neighbors have babies, or if your neighbor or somebody close by, or I think even in the area, kind of like a radio, your baby monitor can pick up other baby monitor sounds. And my best guess for this one, especially logical explanation wise, is that your baby monitor, or maybe even your Nest, was picking up sound from another baby monitor nearby, and somebody else's baby was crying and it was coming through there. That would be my first thought, especially if you haven't had any other like weird ghost activity that would maybe explain a baby, other than the fact that I know your son was like talking to a baby and everything like that. I mean, it's really hard to know what that is, if that's just kids being silly, or if, you know, if kids are perceptive to ghosts, that could be it too. But if you haven't heard the baby crying consistently, I don't know, maybe explore those options on if it was possibly just interference from another baby monitor. Okay, moving on to story number 3 for today. This one starts, "Hi Hannah, it's Katie. Growing up, my mom had a dear friend named Kathy who was like an auntie to me. We always went over to her house for holidays because my mom never had much family. Both Kathy and my mom were what I would call spiritual but not religious. Kathy had saint statues in her house as well as tarot cards. I-ching? I don't know what that is. And Native American Kachina dolls. Kachina dolls? I'm probably saying all of them. I'm probably butchering all those words. I'm so sorry. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes if Kathy was feeling into it, we'd all go sit in her sunroom and she'd do psychic readings for us. I always thought they were a lot of fun, but I never was sure how I felt about them. I was a teenage skeptic at the time, and while I was thrilled by the idea of the paranormal, I wasn't all that sure I believed in it. During one of these readings, she looked at me so seriously and said, 'You know what you saw at the Thurber house?' Thurber house? Why do you have so many weird words I can't say in your story? The Thurber house is a historic home where I grew up that was the childhood home of the writer James Thurber. I told her that I had been there with a friend over dinner, but I didn't tell her about the weird blob-shaped shadow on the bed. It didn't have any features, but still it felt like I was being looked at. When Kathy said that to me, I burst into tears. It felt like she had just outed me in front of my family or something. She told me I was gifted to be able to see things like that, and I didn't want it. I'd go on to see and feel other things. In college, village, when I was visiting my then boyfriend at his house, I saw a ball of smoke floating head height in the middle of the hallway right in front of his best friend's door. I didn't feel scared or uneasy then, just a little confused, I guess. Then, just as suddenly as I had laid my eyes on it, it was gone. I told my boyfriend about it and he got mad at me because he'd always wanted to see a ghost, and here was one right in his own house that wouldn't let him see it. Why would he get mad at you for that? Dear God. Oh, good. You said then boyfriend. I assume it's not your boyfriend currently for a reason. That's such a that's a red flag. Like getting mad for something that you saw that you can't control. Jeez. In my later 20s, I got more comfortable with the idea of ghosts and decided to go with some friends on a little ghost hunting trip. We were in a supposedly haunted graveyard in the middle of August, chatting away, when suddenly I felt colder than I had ever been. It was about 80 degrees and humid as hell out, but I was literally chilled to my bone. It felt like nothing would ever be right or good again in the world. And then just as suddenly as the feeling came, it was a hot summer night again, and I was left wondering why I had once again burst into tears. A few years after that, my mom passed away, and I found myself thinking that if there was any way she could tell me that she was all right, she would do that. She loved the paranormal and told me ghost stories my whole life. If anybody was going to haunt me, it would be my mom. But there was nothing. I've never sensed any kind of paranormal presence from my mom, or from Kathy for that matter. She died exactly 2 years to the day before my mom did. I am a religious person, but I don't believe that free will ends with our death. So if there is any way for the dead to communicate with the living, I have to think it must be either very difficult or unpleasant for them. And that itself makes me not want to believe in the paranormal at all. Still, I have all these weird experiences I don't know what to do with. Thank you so much for sharing my story. I hope you have a great day. And that was from Katie. Thank you so much, Katie. I would offer, if this is some comfort to you, that again, assuming if, let's say, the paranormal is real, I would assume that people that pass away, possibly just because they had, that's what they say, is that like ghosts become ghosts if they have unfinished business, or they can't get closure, or they have to do something, or they just can't quite let go of life, like they don't go to the other side. So perhaps for your mom and Kathy, perhaps they were in a really good place and they felt more at peace and ready to go. And that's why they don't communicate with you in any way. It doesn't mean they're not there still, but just like maybe that's why they don't communicate, because they don't have the capability, because they are fully transitioned. Does that make sense? Like that would be my thought process on it based on what you described. And then the other thing, again, if we're talking about possibilities for paranormal, my running theory personally is that, I think I've talked about this before on this channel, I believe, but what if ghosts aren't people that passed away? What if the paranormal was real, but what if it's not what we think it is? Like, what if, again, I know this sounds wackadoodle. There's absolutely zero proof for this whatsoever, but just for funsies, like, let's say, what if it's energy, not from the other side, from the people who have passed away? Maybe people who have passed away really do pass away and they're not in contact with our world whatsoever. But what if it's a glitch in the matrix thing? What if things that we think of as ghosts are somebody in a parallel realm or another timeline or another universe that's parallel to ours? And what if our universes go, whoopsie, and they kind of knock into each other for a second? And so that's why we will randomly have these paranormal experiences, or we'll see these entities and it's not a dead person, but it is something from another Earth or another timeline that just kind of like whoopsie daisy got like the universe glitched, literally. And so therefore we're ghosts. We are possibly the ghost activity to people in that other realm, because we might do stuff and the glitch happens and then they see little pieces of us and they're like, whoa, what the heck was that? So that, again, just like, it's just fun thought experiments. Nobody take it too seriously. And I am well aware there's no scientific evidence behind any of those. It's just fun to think about. But that's kind of like where I go to, where it's like, maybe it's not that your mom didn't want to communicate with you, or maybe it just doesn't work that way. We don't know how it works, Nobody knows how it works. Thank you so much for your story, Katie. We're going to move on to story number 4 for today, which starts, "Hi, Hannah. I've got plenty of personal paranormal stories I've been dying to share with you. I'll just tell you this one for now. When I was around 16, I was dating an older boy who was into some pretty disturbing things, satanic worship and such. One day I was at his house. He left me there alone. His parents were out of the house, so I was there alone. Rude. I was sitting on his bed watching a movie on his computer when all of a sudden the audio dipped out. Stopped. Then it was replaced by this loud, incoherent gibberish, along with a loud static. I tried clicking around on the computer, but it had been completely frozen. This scared me so much that I bolted out of the room and downstairs, diving onto the couch and hugging my knees. No more than 40 seconds later, maybe, my side of the couch, as in the side I was sitting on, slid roughly a meter out from the wall. I jumped up, screamed, and shouted at who I thought was my boyfriend at the time playing a prank on me, but after looking around, I was still alone. That's terrifying. I cannot imagine going through something like that, having no idea what's going on. Terrifying. Let me also explain, the couch was not in a position that someone could have been hiding behind it. It was flat against a wall. I ran outside and called my mom, who, for background, has had her own share of paranormal experiences and identifies as a medium. I could tell she didn't want to not believe me, but I could hear the disbelief in her voice. What had happened just seemed so unbelievable. I doubted it myself on the outside of that door. She told me to go back inside and fix up the furniture, reminding me that it's not my house, and even if she believes me, my boyfriend's parents will wonder why the couch has been moved. So terrified and tears streaming down my face at this point, walked back inside to see the couch at an angle away from the wall where I sat as quickly as I could. I pushed the couch back in place and left the house again, slamming the door behind me, hugging my knees on the front steps until my boyfriend got back. He didn't believe me and simply laughed. I never went back to his house after that. I don't blame you. That story was also from Anonymous. I hope that was also an ex-boyfriend, because again, I get frustrated with, like, I understand that some of these things are really unbelievable. Like, I get it. I understand that. But can we normalize validating what your loved one says happened, whether you think it really happened or not? Like, does it really matter? And is it worth laughing at them over and making them feel like they're crazy, like, somewhat gaslighting them and making them feel like they are just seeing things and stuff? That's so mean. Regardless of what happened, people's feelings about it are very, very real. And if somebody is coming to you, especially somebody who loves you or is in a relationship with you, and says they're scared, like, please just believe them. Please believe that they're scared, regardless of if there's a logical explanation or not. I'm so sorry that happened to you, though. I guess you were around 16. I was dating an older boy who was into disturbing things, satanic worship and such, you said. That does sound like you're no longer in a relationship with that person, probably for a reason. So, yeah, I'm so sorry that happened. That's so scary. All right. This is going to be the last story for today. I just want to give everybody not really a trigger warning, but just a gross warning, like kind of body horror warning. This is not a paranormal story, if I remember correctly. I kind of breezed through this one a little bit, and this one has an injury that might make you cringe. So if that's something you don't want to listen to, just be aware that you can skip out whenever. Okay. Hello, Hannah. I came across your channel a few months ago, and I find myself listening to it while I prep dinner or do daily tasks around the house. I enjoy the structure and the way you tell these tales. I'm glad you came up randomly after a B-Busta video. Good stuff. I don't know who B-Busta is. I'll have to look that up. Throughout childhood, I was part of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America program. My big was a real go-getter. Once he retired from practicing family law, he went into business for himself. In case you're curious, he got into man-made oyster beds, and a lot of his work can still be found throughout the States and parts of Greece, Italy, and the place where the story in question happened, Ecuador. So for him, this trip was a bit of business and pleasure. He only had to be there for a few days, but he opted to stay for a little over a week just to take in the sights. He ended up staying in a bungalow along the beach, and one night he opted to sleep in a hammock overlooking the ocean and the moonlit sky. From the way he described it, it was breathtaking. I really wish I could have been there with him. However, not even a week after the trip, he starts complaining about foot pain. He did a lot of walking while he was abroad, and he figured that it was just muscle pain catching up to him. I mean, logical conclusion, right? It made perfect sense to him and his family. A couple days go by, the foot pain gets worse, and it's honestly getting to the point where he can barely walk. But he soldiered on as he normally did, and eventually things got worse as they normally do. But what I'm about to describe is far from normal. He picked me up on the night in question, didn't say anything about the foot pain. The plan was to go hit up an ice cream shop and take a walk on the boardwalk. About halfway to the ice cream shop, he lets me know that we're going to put the kibosh on the walk. He levels with me about the foot pain, and I said to him, "Are you sure you even want to go to the ice cream place? If your foot is hurting that badly, I have no problem just hanging out and reading. I'm fine with quiet, you know that." He just said that he had a hankering for gelato, and once we got that, we could head back to his place and could break out some Stephen King novels. He had a noticeable limp and pained expression plastered on his face, and he was never one to show pain, let alone talk about it. We got our ice cream, and he eats his in record time before looking at me and saying that he needs to get some Advil. I just take the rest of my mint chocolate chip in his car and finish it on my way there. Another indicator at how bad off he really was. He wasn't materialistic, but he loved his little sports car. Eating in the thing was verboten. The night goes on as planned, and we all go to bed. But sometime during the night, I hear his wife screaming at the top of her lungs. I hopped out of bed, hurriedly pulled my sweatpants on, and rushed to his room. You know that scene from the Wayans Brothers film, "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker," where Jim Brown takes a bullet to his bunion, and when they show the toe, it's comically swollen and throbbing? Picture that, but without the comedy. He's sweating bullets and looking absolutely unwell, and with the help of his daughter and myself, we get him into his wife's station wagon and get him to the hospital. His daughter and I are sitting in the emergency room, and we're just waiting to find out what is going on when we see his wife run out of the back and into the woman's restroom, where I can hear her loudly vomit. As it turns out, the night he slept on the beach, he forgot to close the insect screen. The doctors cut open his toe in order to drain the infection, and instead ended up pulling... Oh, God. See, I warned you guys. I warned you. It doesn't get better. See, now I'm remembering what I had glanced over when I glanced at this story before putting it in here. Yeah. The doctors cut open his toe in order to drain the infection, and instead ended up pulling out a large botfly larvae that was growing inside his toe and snacking on the muscle. After a round of antibiotics and a few weeks worth of nightmares, he learned his lesson. He would go back to Ecuador a few times just to make sure the oyster beds were profitable. But if he felt the need to sleep on the beach again, he made sure to double check the insect screen, and he normally slept in a pair of Reeboks just to be safe. Oh my goodness. I forgot to add, this is an extra email they sent me. I forgot to add, you can just refer to me as the Dye Maestro. I have a little local tie-dye business that I've been involved with since 2020, and it's become a nickname. I like it, so I think I'll keep it. Thank you, Dye Maestro. Oh my gosh. That brings up all the shock videos from the internet, and also my Do Not Research iceberg. We had a lot of disgusting botfly stories and videos for that matter. Those things, I have seen videos of those being pulled out of various body parts on people when I was researching for those videos, and oh my God. No wonder his wife threw up, went to go. I'm glad she made it to the bathroom. I'm not sure I would have. Imagine seeing that at the hospital, thinking that you had just injured your foot or something, and they find, oh my God. So gross. That's so gross. Thank you so much for your story, though. I really appreciate it. That was a really not fun, I would say, but I do love some non-paranormal, like just crazy, disgusting stories mixed in too. So thank you so much. Okay, guys, that is going to be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and please subscribe to this channel because this is the only type of video that we post here. This is day 6, so I'll see you all tomorrow for our last day of the 7 days of Halloween. Okay, bye.